Please enjoy this uninterrupted conversation as part of our academic integrity series brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. We are back on another episode of our academic integrity series, sponsored by Integrity for Education. And speaking of, we have Thomas Fetch, the CEO at Integrity for Education. Tommy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Elvin. Thank you for inviting me over, and I'm looking forward to another great discussion about academic integrity. And let's get it going.
Absolutely. So, as you know, Tommy, we like to get right into it. So we have 2 guests today, which is awesome. I'm going to try my best to pronounce their names correctly and their titles. Our first guest is Kaela Lindquist. She's Associate Dean of Students and Director of Student Accountability and Conflict Resolution at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Kaela, did I get it right?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, and the episode is over. We're done. Just kidding. All right. Our second guest, she is Amy Kelso, and she's a Senior Associate General Counsel in the Office of Legal Affairs at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Amy, how you doing today?
Fine. Thank you for having both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. So, Kaela, let's start with you because we love to level set first. Tell us all about what you do and how you do it, and then we'll go over to Amy.
Sure. Well, that is a loaded question and probably going to take up most of your podcast.
Go for it.
What I'd say is my office is responsible for really 4 main pillars when it comes to student behaviors on campus. We manage our code of student responsibility, which is your traditional alcohol, drugs, disorderly conduct type of behavior. We also facilitate our academic integrity process. This is a shared responsibility between student affairs and academic affairs. And so my office really serves as a point of contact for our students who are navigating that process. We also help kind of influence some of the pieces with code and educating faculty and all of the things that come with that sometimes really complicated process in general. We also manage our help-seeking protocol on campus and then take the lead on hazing education and hazing investigation. So aside from that, if I was to talk about my associate dean role, again, too much to talk about today, but those are kind of the broad areas that my area covers and what I'm involved in on the day-to-day.
Awesome. Fantastic. Over to you, Amy.
Well, I am, as you mentioned, an attorney in our Office of Legal Affairs at UNC Charlotte, and we have 8 attorneys, so I'm just one of 8.
Wow.
We have a whole stable of attorneys, a lot of legal issues that universities have, and we try to manage those. We practice we try to practice in a sort of a preventative law rather than reactive law, and we try to keep we try to advise our clients in a way that we try to come to yes answers rather than no answers, right? And our focus is really on keeping an open door policy and building relationships with our constituents across campus, the staff and administrators who we serve, and so that they will come to us with questions in advance of taking some action so that we can help them and advise them to do the thing that is going to be legal and appropriate and in compliance with policies and laws. So some of our attorneys are specialized in their subject matter areas. I have been around a really, really long time, and I sort of I'm all over the place. So I do a lot of work with policies, university level policies. I advise clients, very diverse clients, including Kaela and other offices. The provost office, I work closely with our Office of Education Abroad. I work with a risk management and worked on a lot of contracts and transactional work as well. I work a lot with business affairs. I kind of work all over the place. But one of my main jobs is to manage our university policies, which are wide ranging. We have about 150 plus university policies, and one of those is the Code of Student Academic Integrity. And that's where I work closely with Kaela, both on interpreting that policy, revising that policy, and applying that policy, especially when we have some tricky academic integrity issues on campus.
Awesome. And, before we hit record, Kaela, you mentioned that your relationship is pretty unique, and I agree in higher ed. So if you can kind of talk more about how you and Amy work together, and then after Kaela is done, maybe Amy, you can add on to that as well. I'll talk about that relationship, how you work day to day, strategically, and all that good stuff. Go ahead, Kaela.
Yeah, so I do recognize that our relationship is unique where not only do we talk a lot about policy stuff, but we run a lot of ideas by each other. And I think that is true at UNC Charlotte just broadly, that I have a lot of really good relationships with my colleagues in ways that I don't know always take place on campuses, but I do really appreciate that it is, if I send Amy a chat or I send her a quick email to say, hey, can I talk to you about this broad thing that might be bubbling, that I'm able to usually get her on the phone the same day or within a reasonable amount of time where we can really talk through things before they become major issues. And I think that had been really helpful because I've worked with other colleagues where there maybe is more contentious relationship between legal affairs and student affairs, or particularly with disciplinary offices. But for me to be able to have somebody where I can say, this seems strange, or can I just double check that I'm following due process, or that my interpretation of what the policy says is what your interpretation of the policy says, has been, I think, really helpful as we've navigated some difficult conversations with individuals who might be on the other side of our opinion. And so, particularly with academic integrity related issues, I recognize for me, these are oftentimes, when I tell a student, like, you shouldn't drink underage, they tend to get it. But once I start to talk to a student about, you might have violated the expectations of the course, integrity means something so personal to people that oftentimes they're like, well, I'm not a cheater. And I'm not saying that you're a cheater. I'm saying you've worked outside of expectations, but it just lands differently. It feels differently. And even for our faculty who are putting a lot of time, energy, and effort into their courses, when students are acting outside of those expectations, they can sometimes bring different feelings to a case that maybe doesn't exist in other types of conduct. And so I appreciate that, because not only are we navigating maybe the issue that's happening within the classroom, we're also navigating sometimes people's feelings related to that issue, and having an individual who I can go to help ground me to say, what am I missing? Am I misinterpreting anything? From a legal perspective, can sometimes reset that conversation with whomever I'm talking with, whether it be a faculty or a student, to really move our conversations forward.
Gotcha. Amy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I appreciate Kaela's perspective, and thank you, Kaela, for those kind words about our relationship, because I feel the same way. It goes both ways. It's important to me, as I said before, as an attorney, to have to build those relationships and have those relationships with our campus partners, including Kaela, so that we can have conversations that are frank. I rely on her as a subject matter expert, and then I can sort of pipe in my perspective on the application of the policy or law. And we have, different perspectives, but we often, we can always kind of come to a conclusion together about the best way to move forward. And so I really appreciate having campus partners who are experts and who I can trust their judgment. And Kaela is one of those. So I think we work well together. And I know that it sounds unique and may be unique that we have these sort of close relationships between the Office of Legal Affairs and our campus partners. I think that's something, like I said before, that we strive for in our office. And I take it for granted. I've always practiced at UNC Charlotte, and we've always had that ethos. And I think when we bring in new attorneys, we expect that ethos. And so we carry it forward as we have new attorneys working with our campus partners across campus, across divisions. And so I really appreciate the relationship as well, because I know that if Kaela has an issue, she's going to reach out to me. She's not going to go do something just because it's more efficient or expedient. if she has a question, she's always going to come to me and we'll work it out together.
Awesome. I love that. Over to you, Tommy.
Right. Yeah. That brings up some questions like with me talking about academic integrity. But the first thing, it sounds like you have a lot to do. And so my question to that um, is there like a rise in cases you see like from a specific point in time, like back in time? I don't know, for example, when AI entered the scene, or something like during Corona, even a little bit earlier, that happened, like some compelling event that happened to really raise the amount of academic misconduct cases, or am I mistaken? It sounds like a lot of work you have.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's necessarily a rise in behavior. And I say that only because, particularly my work is reactionary, in that I believe that there's likely more things happening than what I know about. And so part of what I think the struggle can be at times is asking people to trust and follow a process to report information so that we can address it. And so depending on you where you are, there may be cultures at institutions that are a little bit different than what we have. We've worked really hard on trying to listen to our faculty to figure out where the barriers might have been to reporting. And so in addressing those barriers, when you make it easier to report and taking away some of the more punitive actions that sometimes faculty are afraid of implementing with their students, we're naturally going to see a rise in people wanting to follow a process, which is exactly what we want for our students and so forth, because then we can ensure that education is occurring and that we're not seeing repeated behaviors within the community. And so I would say we've seen a little bit of an increase, but I don't know if that's an increase that just hasn't existed before. It just might just be that we removed the barriers. And so a good example
Mm.
of that is when our office got more involved with academic integrity. I believe it was, 2016, 2017. It used to be primarily in academic affairs, but we realized that, and it was one person who was managing all academic integrity stuff on campus. We were
Yeah.
seeing an increase at Charlotte with really a boom in our population. We're now at a Research One institution level. We have 32,000 students. And so back when we were maybe a little bit smaller, it was maybe more manageable. But then as we continued to grow and strive for growth, there was a recognition that it needed to be more of a partnership and a joint effort. And so when we first started, we had two ways of resolving a case. One was through what we called an informal resolution or a settlement form, which was really between the faculty member and the student. And it was all
Hmm.
convened in that class. And then the dean of students office just held the record. And at that time, in order to put forward that form, the student had to come in person, sign the form in front of the faculty member and a witness in order for it to stick. That's really cumbersome in a lot of different ways. And now we've made a lot of different changes up to that point, where now this year we actually try to create less of a barrier for our faculty by creating a DocuSign form that lets students and faculty engage quicker with that process. And so we have seen maybe an increase in reportability to things, mostly because we took away some of the cumbersome actions that were needed before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think when you update your process, you're going to see a natural increase in things. But from my opinion, I don't know if we actually had more cases or not. I think we just had less reported cases. Now,
All
I
right.
I will add that behavior has evolved some. The reasons why students engage in academic misconduct or cheating behavior hasn't really changed a lot. There's still like the lack of time, or I didn't know, or those types of things that we hear pretty consistently from our students. But how they are engaging in misconduct. So you mentioned like COVID, when everything was online, we saw a lot more behavior related to using unauthorized resources. So things like Chegg and Course Hero and whatever
Yeah.
other resource you want to say that's related to that, which became problematic because they were trying to supplement their learning, but maybe taking it too far. And then now with artificial intelligence, that's a new hurdle that we're all trying to figure out in higher education about what does this mean? What's allowed? What's not allowed? How do we make sure that we're supplementing and facilitating learning versus replacing learning? And those are all things that we're navigating, I think, at UNC Charlotte and broadly within higher education. Amy, I
That's
don't know if you have a
interesting.
different perspective.
Yeah.
No, I mean that covers a lot of it. I was going to say that some of the and you have the numbers as to like how many cases are coming up. Several things. One, Kaela does a really good job of trying to inform our faculty, right, of these resources, these processes, and we're always working to reach out to faculty. She has a really vibrant website that has a lot of guidance for faculty, and so trying to point faculty to the processes so that they're not kind of going outside the process. And I think we have gotten better at that over the recent years, so that they're not working outside the process and not providing due process to students, because then that brings a rise to student grievances, and we don't want that to happen. But the other parts about it were like with the types of cases that have come up during COVID, things like respondus monitor and those kinds of things we had to create new policies around that. One of the things that I do in addition to helping to interpret and edit, revise the Code of Student Academic Integrity, excuse me, is also helping to draft suggested syllabus policies for our faculty. And so we help draft suggested policies for lots of different subjects, but one of them is AI. So we've had to work closely based on feedback we're getting from faculty, feedback I'm getting from people like Kaela, as to how to advise faculty to what to put in your syllabus, right? Related to artificial intelligence, related to recording a class that's an online class when COVID came up,
Yep.
and what is permissible, what is not permissible when they're doing assessments, how to use tools like Respondus Monitor, and so there's a lot of sort of new things coming up. And as Kaela said, the violations of academic integrity are the same. It's just the methods are changing and evolving, and those are challenges, right? So, for instance, with the rise of AI, generative AI specifically, because we're used to having things like Grammarly and that kind of thing, but now we're working with generative AI. The AI detection tools out there are not good. They're not accurate. And our university does not endorse them or recommend them to faculty. And yet we're pretty sure they're using them. And so we have to manage that side of things and advising them, for instance, not to use them. And then if they do use them and they bring them to Kaela and they say, look, here's a clear indication that this is a student has used generative AI to develop this paper, Kaela will then step back and say, well, why do you think that? Why do you think that that's an accurate assessment? So the conversations I think that Kaela's having with faculty are kind of different based on the rise of AI and back when we had COVID, all of the online experiences that students were having. And so my sort of work with Kaela has evolved that way as well.
So would you say that AI is then the biggest threat for academic integrity in the modern times, or for now, is that what you say? Or is there other threats you can think of?
Well, I think if I'm looking at the behaviors that we're seeing from our students, we're still seeing them using maybe internet sources that aren't as accurate as we need them to be. And so those Chegg, Course Hero, other tutoring or sites that claim to be tutoring sites. So that I think still exists. I think one of the pieces that I'm noticing with our students is that there still is, and there has been, some of the digital divide stuff that has come forward. So we have, again, 32,000 plus students that some of them had a different level of K-12 experience. And so some of our students are coming in prepared to be able to understand plagiarism or understand different pieces of technology versus others. And so while artificial intelligence absolutely is a piece of our conversation with our students, and it is coming up in ways where they're maybe using it when they're not supposed to, What I'm actually seeing is more of our students are afraid to use it because they don't want to get into trouble. And in
Yeah, good.
talking to our students, yeah, and in talking to our students, it's fascinating because they're like, I didn't even want to download it because I thought you would catch me for cheating. I'm like, whoa, I wouldn't know if you downloaded something like ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever it is that you want to use. And so I think as we're navigating these conversations, there is a duty from our institution side to help them understand how can you use it responsibly. How can you like weigh it to determine is there like what is the information that it's giving you, and so the output and the input components of things. And no matter what, as I'm navigating conversations with students, it's a whatever you turn in, you're responsible for. So if you've turned in something that's inaccurate information, whether you have used an artificial intelligence tool or you have gone to a website or whatever, you are still accountable for what you've turned in and the work that you've produced. And and so I'm navigating a lot of those things, but it is fascinating when I'm talking to students and they're like, I don't think I should use it at all because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be suspended. And so it's almost like the pendulum swung too far. Where now, when you look at industry and workforce, there is some expectation that they know how to use certain pieces. And so, how do
Absolutely
we
agree. Yeah.
yeah. How do we bring this into the conversation where we start to help people be able to really analyze the output that they're getting, making sure that the tool that they're using is appropriate for the whatever it is that they're hoping to accomplish. But I think one of the pieces that we still see with a lot of frequency is our students not being on the same playing field level, or the same level, where some of them come in differently prepared for the type of work that their faculty are expecting from them. And so our plagiarism numbers are still pretty steady with things. And when I talk to students, like, did you know that you were even plagiarizing? Some of them didn't know about in-text citations because during
Mhm.
COVID, they were told it's okay. You have appropriately cited if you just copy and paste at the end of your paper what source you used. And so I think we're going to still continue to see some of those impacts of the varying K-12 experience that our students have in our classrooms on our campus. And so sometimes that's the conversation that I'm having with faculty of how would they have known that they could or could not do something. Uh, and I think our faculty, if we just even go rewind 10 years, had a different level of expectation for students that they were coming in differently prepared. But COVID did um, maybe set some patterns and habits for our students that we're working to kind of help them relearn or forget or whatever we need to help them be more successful.
You know, I'll
Interesting.
just
Yes.
I'll add to that in sort of when we're in talking about AI specifically. And I mentioned before that I helped draft some suggested syllabus policies for faculty. And as Kaela was saying, sometimes students aren't sure how they can use it or whether they can use it. So one of the suggested syllabus policies we have developed is around the use of generative AI. The ones we don't suggest ever that they just say you can't use it altogether because they're gonna there's probably gonna be ways that they can use it productively. So we suggest that we have two different options that we suggest in our syllabus policies. One is that, there's language around generative AI being permitted in the course as long as there's attribution and describing how it can be permitted and how it can be used in the course. Another one is another option that they could have in their syllabus is it's permitted only as specifically designated, like only for a certain assignment again, or in a certain way. So we try to, rather than, just sort of saying, no, you can never use it for any reason, which I think was their gut reaction initially when AI was sort of burst onto the scene. Um, we now have a more nuanced understanding of its place in the world, whether we like it or not. And so we try to guide faculty to say, okay, let's think more, more specifically about how it can be used, and when it can be used, and then guide the students that way so that they have notice of what they can and can't do. Um, Kayla and I both serve together on several task forces and committees that are university wide that address the use of AI generally. And one of the things we're focusing on is AI literacy, and working with our Center for Teaching and Learning on teaching students and faculty how they can use it productively, rather than just saying don't use it at all. So I think I feel like we're in baby steps in this right now, trying to figure out how it fits into our world as educators, as responsible educators, and also, as trying to prepare these students for the world that they're going to live in, where AI is going to be everywhere. So yeah, that's what I had to add to what Kaela said.
I'm really glad that you mentioned like the Center for Teaching and Learning, because I do want to recognize our colleagues across campus who this has been a part of our conversation, really since AI lit the world on fire just a few years ago, because I think for me, it's important that our messaging is consistent across campus. So what faculty are hearing from me is also something that is being supported by our Center for Teaching and Learning, who really does a lot of the workshops to help our faculty develop their syllabus language and create their assessments and things along those lines. And so I don't want my area to have a different messaging than their area, or from legal affairs. And so we do talk with some frequency across to say, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? And are we meeting the needs of our community? Um, because I think that's the only way that we're going to really be able to set our students and ourselves up for success. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I was going to say my office helps out with our Center for Teaching and Learning on their syllabus policy workshops that they have. And we try to provide some guidance on our side of, here's when I'm looking at your syllabus and as I'm looking at how you set expectations for your students, how you can maybe write a language that doesn't lock you into a specific decision, but then also set some clear expectations. So there's a little bit of a balance with that, right? So if you are writing in your syllabus that if you use generative AI, you will fail my course. When I read that, that doesn't give me a whole lot of room to work with the student on something. And then I would argue back that, what if the student has a history with my office? All you're saying is that they're going to fail your course, but maybe they need something a little bit more nuanced as a response, but you've locked me into a decision already. So how can we still set an expectation of, in general, individuals who violate course policy may be facing this as a consequence, because we want to be clear, but we also don't want to necessarily lock us in where we can't offer some flexibility in times that it makes sense to. I get a lot of questions from faculty about consistency and fairness, which I think is a common question among conduct professionals. And for me, consistency really looks at the fact that we are consistently addressing behavior within our community that is problematic. And so that's offering the student the opportunity to be heard, offering the student the opportunity to understand where our concerns are. But fairness comes into play when we're looking at the student that's across from us and applying an appropriate educational intervention to prevent that behavior from happening again. And so that allows maybe for us to apply a different spectrum of outcomes where we can still be consistent in addressing behavior, but we can take into consideration some of those nuances that often come up in conversation. Because while for the faculty member, it may be insulting that a student use generative AI or something to complete their assignment, when I talk to the student, the only thing that they took into consideration was that their assignment was due at 11:59 and it was 11:50 when they started it. And they needed to get something in, right? So they were up against the deadline. And in some ways, this is Kaela's personal soapbox and opinion on this, we have set a expectation within higher ed where whether we like it or not, there is a lot that rides on the grades of a course. And so when you look at how that impacts a GPA, when you look at how that impacts then their ability to get scholarships or their ability to get that internship that they're really interested in, when we look at the motivations behind why students might engage in some of these things, sometimes it's just a matter of survival and cost benefit for them. Versus when I talk to a faculty, they sometimes take it as a personal affront. And many times it's not that. It's not that the student actually doesn't like the faculty member. It's because they felt like they didn't have any other option. And so it's very rare that they'll come in and say, I just didn't like this person, which is why I did what they told me not to do. It is some other motivating factor or a cost benefit of I'm probably not going to get caught. And so I'm going to try it. Kind of similar to how people are like, I might not get caught speeding. So let's just see what happens. And then if I get caught, then I'll deal with it then. Right. And so that's more, I think, of what I'm experiencing on my side, but why I've appreciated the conversation broadly with our colleagues, because then I can give more specific, maybe guidelines or suggestions to our faculty of don't concentrate on outlining that what tool they can't use, concentrate on the behaviors that that tool can do that bothers you. So don't just say you can't use Grammarly in my course, because students will then say, okay, I'll use WordTune or I'll use Quillbot or I'll use any other like insert new item here. But if you concentrate on what that tool can do, it's important in this class for you to learn how to synthesize your own writing. Therefore, I don't want you to use tools that do that for you. Our students tend to understand that when they have a good reason behind the no, they can, and how it applies to their education or how it applies to their future work, they tend to take that that suggestion better. So a great example of this is I was talking to a student who they had a faculty member who didn't want them to use generative AI for a particular assignment because they knew that in the field, the student wouldn't have access to technology in order to perform that task. And so the faculty said specifically, I don't want you to use it in this assignment because you need to know this for when you don't have access to the internet, but you are still, needing to rebuild that bridge or provide this level of care for a patient in an area where technology and or electricity or whatever might not be available to you. And when the students got that, they understood the why behind the no generative AI, no technology, no whatever. And that made sense to them because it directly applied to something that they could potentially use in their future.
I mean, this
Kaela, I think that's a really good point. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Damien. No, go for it.
No, I just want to add to that. I think Kaela's she's very sensitive to the purpose of academic integrity enforcement, and it is an educational exercise, right? It is the point is to educate our students to be able to go out into the world, and so that is I think she brings that to her conversations with faculty and with students, right? What is the intent? What is the purpose of this exercise, this academic exercise? And like you said, if you can sort of bring that out, take people outside of their sort of rigid thought processes, you probably get a better result. And some of the other things I think we've done recently that help with that is to have some outcomes that are also a little bit more nuanced, like a remediation outcome, rather than just slapping somebody with a warning or a reduced grade or whatever. Something that's a little bit more nuanced where they can have a remediation. And you can describe, if you want to, Kaela, what that actually looks like in practice. But it allows the student to have more of a learning process regarding academic integrity rather than just being slapped with a penalty.
Yeah, and this is such a great conversation. We're already coming up on time. My God, it's flying so fast. All right, so I have to ask the last question, and I always get to ask the easiest one. So I'm going to start with you, Amy. I'm going to start with you. What do you see as the future of higher education through the academic integrity lens? What do you think is going to happen 5-10 years out from now? And say it in a minute or less. No, just kidding.
I do think I think that artificial intelligence I think we're going to get our arms around it, at least as it looks now, like how we are able to embrace it now. It is going to be a struggle as it evolves. And also, I think it's going to be interesting to see how students who are exposed to it from age 0 all the way up to university level, how they're going to be using it in their daily lives and in their school lives, and then us sort of capturing that, figuring out then how to structure our policies and our processes and our syllabus policies and our teaching around that use. So I think it is going to evolve. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know, like Kaela said, I don't know if it's going to lead to a rise in academic integrity violations, I think it's just going to bring a nuanced sort of look or perspective on what academic integrity looks like in this sort of new frontier that we have. That's evolving so quickly that it is hard to sort of get your arms around it. But I feel like we're doing a good job of it at this point. But I don't think that what we're doing today is probably going to apply in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So I think we are going to have to keep up with it, keep on top of it, and pay attention to it. So I think that is sort of where the future I see is going in the academic integrity world. But I'm curious to know what Kaela thinks.
Take us home, Kaela.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm hopeful that as we continue to have conversations around this, we as educators can kind of reframe what we mean by accountability and what is needed to help educate our students. I think we at one point had a really punitive view of like, if you do X, then Y is going to be the outcome. And it was really transactional with our students. I still don't know. I can't predict what the next thing will be. I've done conduct work now for a decade plus, and every time I think I got a handle on it, something new comes out. But I think when I'm projecting into the future, what I'm hopeful for as us as educators is that we can really start to think about the needs of our students instead of the like, don't do this, but help them really understand why it's important for them not to engage in certain ways. And then as we are developing outcomes and developing ways of approaching this, we are taking into consideration what is needed for that student to be long-term successful. So beyond just the failing of the course, which has a big impact, we already know that education is getting more expensive. People are already questioning the value of higher ed. And so putting more of those barriers into place versus allowing our students to learn and grow while still having reasonable expectations for them is all really important. And so when I'm thinking about academic integrity broadly, I think the conversation has shifted from transactional to transformational. And so I'm hopeful that we continue along those lines so that we really are refocusing on the why and the importance of why does integrity matter, not just academic integrity. I ask this of my students and like pretty much every presentation I do, because the reality is academic integrity or integrity comes down to trust. I have to trust people within my community to do the thing that I'm saying that they can do when they graduate from UNC Charlotte. So if we've given you the engineering degree, I have to trust that you can build that bridge. I have to trust that you can take care of my family as the nurse or the doctor, or that my retirement is going to be there when I want to get there, right? And so I hope that as we talk about academic integrity, we really broaden it to help people understand the why, which is that we need to be able to trust in each other as a society to do the things that we say that we can do. Because without that, then that's more scary for me to think about, and I don't really want to. So, and with that, and that's what I'm hopeful for. And if I could predict, like, man, I'd be putting some money in Vegas right now, but we're not going to. So.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Yeah. The trust and transformational. I love that. Big takeaways for me. So awesome conversation. Let me outro my guest co-host. He is Tommy, Thomas Fetch, CEO at Integrity for Education. Tommy, thank you as always for being here.
Thank you too. That was a great conversation. I was a little bit more passive today since it was a great conversation only to listen and participate and from your knowledge, say it like this. I believe that some guardrails maybe are important for students because of the why, because sometimes they do not get it the first moment because they're not well prepared. That's at least what I took from it. And so with that learning, I see an upcoming demand on something like academic integrity management system, like something that really helps us also to gain an overview and transparency and insights in what's going on in order to learn from it, maybe to put it in a syllabus, but also maybe to help to educate people at the very beginning, right? When they are new to it, they're not really used to the community college day-to-day business when they come directly from high school or some K-12 school. So I think that is a good perspective, and I hope we'll be in much more conversations like this in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me outro our guest today, and I'm going to start with Amy Kelso. She's a Senior Associate General Counsel in the Office of Legal Affairs. Amy, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. And I will outro our guest, your guest, Kaela Lindquist, Associate Dean of Students and Director of Student Accountability and Conflict Resolution at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, UNC Charlotte. Thank you, Kaela, for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Thanks for listening to this uninterrupted conversation as part of our Academic Integrity series brought to you by Integrity for Education. Integrity for Education supports your institution by unlocking the full potential of digitalization through the right mix of software solutions, strategic consulting, and sustainable implementation of state-of-the-art technologies. Learn more at integrityforeducation.de. That's integrity, the number 4, education.de.